In boxing, I had a lot of fear. Fear was good. For the first time in the bout with Muhammad Ali, I didn't have any fear. I thought, this is easy. This is what I've been waiting for. No fear at all. No nervousness. And I lost. That was George Foreman. Yeet yeet.
From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where this week has seen one of the greatest living Americans pass from our midst. George Edward Foreman, Houston, Texas, Olympic gold medal, Mexico City, 1968, two-time heavyweight champion with reigns 21 years apart, and a man who also owned and fairly earned the titles of hero and role model. Passed away last Friday at the age of 76, and you bet your sweet ass we are pouring one out for Big George tonight in the main segment. But before all that, good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. So glad you could join us this evening. Here is your golden age of Western civilization news roundup for the week ending 28 March 2025. Dateline Hollywoodland, Monday, 24 March. Former talk show host and alleged comedian Ellen DeGeneres boldly followed the lead of fellow bitter geriatric lesbian Rosie O'Donnell earlier this week when she announced that she has fled the United States and is now residing across the pond in merry old England. And I'm sure the English are just delighted to have her. Now, a person of Ms. DeGeneres' sensibilities, one might assume she would want to go live in one of the big cities, your Londons, your Liverpools, your Birminghams, you know, where she can live right up close to the cosmopolitan multiculturalism that she says she loves so very much. But she's not going to do that, as it turns out. Instead, she says that she has rented a modest little $18 million estate in the Cotswolds, where she is pretty much guaranteed to never see another human being who is not a white English speaker unless she goes specifically out of her way to do so. Is it a strange way of showing how much you sparkly heart pluralism and mass migration, moving to a new country and getting as far away from the immigrants as you possibly can? Yeah, I think some might say that. And one might also ask of Ms. DeGeneres and Ms. O'Donnell both, so did you guys happen to check out the tax rates in your new homeland before you relocated? Because look, I'm sure the both of you are going to be very happy with your new lives over in the British Isles, but I'm also not dismissing the possibility that you might come back as MAGA-fied conservatives once you get an up-close look at what life in Europe looks like in the third decade of the 21st century. Top tax bracket in the United States, 37%, which is absurd and intolerable, but that's not the point right now. Top tax bracket in Britain, 60%, and it's actually come down. And that's if you have a really good accountant. If you don't have a good accountant, probably closer to 80. Top tax bracket in Ireland, 51%, which is actually lower than I expected it to be. So God bless the both of you. Ellen and Rosie, you guys, you're really going to teach Trump a lesson. And won't he look like a fool when we in America no longer have any painfully unfunny geriatric lesbian comics to entertain us. Dateline Montreal, Tuesday, 25 March. New Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who has somehow managed to become the leader of a Western democracy without ever having been elected to any office, earned widespread condemnation this week, or at least what passes for widespread condemnation in Canada, when he declined to participate in a French-language debate with Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre. God, I don't know how to say that. Pierre Poilievre. And the rest of the motherfuckers who seek to unseat him and claim occupancy of Rideau Hall in the snap election that disgraced former Prime Minister Trudeau, scheduled for the 28th of next month before he stood down from office. Now, for those of you who are unschooled in the intricacies of Kazakhstani politics, generally speaking, when you're a party leader who aspires to ascending to the premiership, you're expected to be conversant in both of Canada's official languages, or at least be able to order a bowl of poutine in both languages. But it looks like our man, Mr. Carney, doesn't parlez-vous le français as well as he might like, and this has some of his supporters in the Quebec separatist movement just barking mad for Canadians, at least, where they scream at you for a while and then spend twice as long apologizing for it. And it's an especially bad look for the Liberal Party, not just because they depend on huge levels of support from Francophone Quebecers, but because literally every other party in the country happily said, sure, our guy will be there. Of course he speaks French. What do we look like? Americans? Quebecor Media, the broadcaster that was set to host the debate, they said in a statement, according to the Montreal Gazette, quote, "The main political parties had until today to confirm their participation. Sadly, although the Bloc Québécois, the Conservative Party of Canada, and the New Democratic Party accepted the broadcaster's invitation, TVA regrets to announce that it has been forced to cancel this face-à-face event due to the Liberal Party of Canada's refusal to participate," end quote. And in closing, I think we can only say, ask me for the translation in the chat. Dateline Washington, Wednesday, 26 March. In the greatest comedy show that took place anywhere in America this week, the heads of PBS and NPR appeared before the House Government Efficiency Committee this week in order to assure the Congress and the American people that their content is totally free of any political bias whatsoever. They call things right down the middle every time. They've got absolutely no political axe to grind, and the U.S. taxpayer should have absolutely no compunction about continuing to lavishly subsidize their operations. And they both managed to keep a straight face the entire time, even as the entire room was erupting in laughter over the self-evident preposterousness of the claims they were making, so I guess they deserve some sort of credit for that at least. Now, there was a particular sequence from this hearing that you may have seen or heard, since it went a little bit viral, as the kids are fond of saying. I don't remember if it was the PBS lady or the NPR lady, but it doesn't matter. And then this goes right back to a thing you have heard me say before. All it takes to ruin these liars is throwing their own words back in their faces. All the congressman is doing in that clip is reading her own tweets back to her from 5 years ago. Do you think America is drunk on white supremacy? Do you think the country was built on black genocide? Did you take an entire day off work to read a book called The Case for Reparations? And of course, she just flatly denies that she has ever said or thought any of these things. Well, then why did you tweet about it, lady? Why did you say that you took an entire day off work to read a book that you now claim to have never read? And we know what the real answer is. We know these people who are obsessed with public virtue signaling and showing their commitment to current thing, always showing they support current thing. That's all that matters. Finally, she gets pinned down. She knows she's making a damned lying fool of herself. So she attempts to fall back on, well, I may have thought those things back then, but my thinking has evolved in the past 5 years. So you were a dyed-in-the-wool race huckstering radical leftist half a decade ago, but you don't think any of those things anymore. And your testimony before this committee right now is that you bring no political agenda to your professional duties. Is that your final answer? Because you have just made, I think, a fairly magnificent case for why neither PBS nor NPR should ever receive 1 red cent of taxpayer funding ever again. Frankly, I could never figure out why PBS always asks me to send them money when I am paying for the damn thing anyway. Dateline box office dumpster fire land. Thursday, 27 March. In the feel-good story of the spring that just keeps on giving, Disney's Snow White and the Seven Horrifying CGI Nightmares has managed to establish itself not just as a box office bomb of historic proportions, but possibly a disaster of such unprecedented scale that it threatens to be the sort of thing that can wind up wrecking an entire studio forever. But for everybody in the Disney PR department, since there's no longer any reason to keep slathering lipstick on the pig, they have well and truly got the knives out now, and they are no longer pretending, because they don't have to, that they like Rachel Zegler. It almost feels like when the media Democrat complex no longer had to pretend they liked Joe Biden and thought he was an awesome president. Now, a fellow by the name of Jonah Platt, who is the son of Mark Platt, one of the producers on the Snow White picture, he wrote the following on Twitter this week in response to rumors that his dad, the producer, had flown across the country to personally meet with Ms. Zegler and tell her, no, seriously, you need to shut your goddamn mouth and stop lying and stop torpedoing our film, because this is really starting to suck. Here's the quote. Yeah, my dad, the producer of an enormous piece of Disney IP with hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, had to leave his family to fly across the country to reprimand his 20-year-old employee for dragging her personal politics into the middle of promoting the movie for which she signed a multi-million-dollar contract to get paid and do publicity for. He then went on to say, free speech does not mean you're allowed to say whatever you want in your private employment without repercussions. What a concept. Tens of thousands of people worked on that film, and she hijacked the conversation for her own immature desires at the risk of all the colleagues and crew and blue-collar workers who depend on that movie to be successful. Narcissism is not something to be coddled or encouraged, end quote. And to Rachel Zegler, all of us here at the Blast Radius wish her the absolute best of luck with her future career as an OnlyFans content creator. Term used loosely. No pun intended. Dateline Washington, Friday, 28 March. In a story that, in the words of the immortal Clark W. Griswold, makes us all want to whistle zippity-doo-dah out our assholes, Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced this week that the industrialized graft and money laundering machine known as USAID is in fact being killed. It's being killed with extreme prejudice, and its essential functions, such as they are going to be folded into the rubric of the State Department. So it's a sad day for cultural imperialism, I think. But wait, I hear you say, aren't our friends on the leftist lunatic fringe always telling us how much they hate cultural imperialism? Aren't they always preaching the gospel of moral relativism where cultures are concerned that no society is intrinsically superior to any other? Well, yes. Yes, they are. And apparently they see no contradiction in preaching that gospel while at the same time pumping hundreds of billions of dollars each year into efforts to wokesterize the entire world to reflect the morals and the values of people in American college faculty lounges. But it's strange, I haven't heard any of them complain these past couple weeks that the indigenous Peruvians won't have their transgender operas and Serbians won't get their workplace DEI training. And you know what else just occurs to me? If I say I spent $10 million promoting gender equity in northern Mexico, there is no way you can prove I didn't. It's almost like these things have names that are just unverifiable and unfalsifiable enough to make a great cover for a big money laundering scheme. Oh, you wanted receipts? Well, first I promoted gender equity at this resort in Mazatlan. Then I promoted gender equity at this resort in Acapulco. Then I promoted gender equity at every whorehouse in Juarez. I mean, those are all workplaces, right? And yeah, I know you want more Roundup, but I'm afraid you're not getting it because this is where the Roundup ends. And what happens when the Roundup ends? Well, that's when I toss it over to my distinguished colleague, your illustrious co-host, the man who put the id in hominid, the one and only, your friend and mine, Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch.
Tactical nuke incoming!
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Blast Radius, where we are going to discuss some basic politics of the day, some basic current events of the day. There's going to be a little Doge ticker we're going to check out, and then we're going to watch Ali's fight against, I always forget the man's name,
Foreman's fight against Moorer.
There it is, Moorer. That's right. And we're gonna pick up like the last 10 minutes of that and just do a general discussion over it, because it's actually a very interesting fight when you get down to it. But until then, you're gonna have to look at our pretty faces, and we might at some point in time actually have a tiny discussion about some pyramidology that's been floating around out there, and you might want to take your tinfoil hats out for this one. What's up, Glock and Loaded?
He says he's not putting his tinfoil hat on. I'm not sure if I believe him.
I'm not planning on it. The thing is, well, we'll get to it. Where do you want to start this lovely tirade? Because there's a few directions we could go.
Shouldn't we say hello to the chat first?
We could totally do that very thing. We press those buttons. Those are the buttons we're interested in. So we got, guess who? My main
Scotty
man,
Waddles.
Scotty Waddles.
Hey, now.
Yes, sir. Welcome to the chat, brother. Casey May gets the Scotty Waddles gets the gold. Casey May gets the silver. And Mitchell, is that Mitchell? Hi. They get the bronze.
I believe that's the French version of Michael. So Michelle
That's
would be
what I was
correct.
thinking. Mario Delgado, welcome to chat. Good to see you, bud. Queen Bird. Yeah.
Hello,
M's
Queen.
Dad
Good
World.
to see you. Hello, M.
We've got Make Stupid People Famous.
Hello, Fiona.
Fiona, welcome in, girl. Good to see you. Do you ever manage to get in touch
I
with
like
Melody?
my hat.
We got Ink 1776. Welcome in, bud.
I like to have the one snap snapped and the other snap not snapped. So it does look a little bit like a beret, and that's fine.
I think it's fair to argue that they ruined Snow White for absolutely everyone equally. I don't think it's any more ruined for anyone involved.
Yeah, we haven't seen a lot of. I'm so glad they made this movie for me, because aren't movies supposed to have a target audience? I don't think I understand who this movie's target audience is, unless it's just angry lesbians who love Disney.
I've got a very controversial, and I've mentioned this before, that I have a controversial opinion about Black Panther, the movie. You remember all the rage and the hate and everything that came out about how the whole thing was handled for whatever reason, and I was the only person out here going, "No,
I
don't
remember people on Twitter saying that white people shouldn't come see the movie on opening night so that all the seats can be available for black people," which is a strange way of wanting a movie to do well by telling people not to come to it.
Down south, we call that a boycott.
It sounds more like a boycott, but
yes,
what do you do?
But personally, I think that it was an excellent interpretation of an anti-hero from a mid-70s comic, right? The whole concept is to take all of the typical comic tropes where you've got all of the heroes being heroic and doing heroic things, and you flip it over upside down. And that's what the Black Panther does. He's not exactly a hero. He's more vigilante type. Yeah, he has a mandate from his country because he's king, but that's not a mandate worldwide unless, you're a total authoritarian.
And the mandate is build a wall, keep the damn immigrants out.
And in this case, those immigrants happen to be white.
To answer the question, the French translation of the thing that I closed the Canada segment of the roundup was, and I probably didn't say it very well, but it was, your mother was a hamster and your father smelt of elderberries. Thank you for asking, because I forgot.
Right. Nice. I forgot to ask.
And
Of course.
anybody who doesn't understand that reference is banned from the show.
Oh dear. Now what? You just got rid of 9/10 of our viewers. And your co-host.
Come on, dude. Monty Python, Holy Grail.
Yeah, no, I got it. I'm just it's freaking comic relief, bro. So Snow White. I mean, what'd you expect? They reshot it 173 different times.
Which seems to be the custom now with all of your Disney and Disney Marvel and Disney Star Wars movies. You shoot the terrible first version of it. You do a couple test screenings. Everybody tells you it's a piece of shit. You shoot everything again. Maybe you release a trailer. Everybody hates that. Then you reshoot some more stuff, and then it just kind of cycles on and on like that until you spent basically 3 times as much as the budget of the picture was supposed to be. And it's probably more terrible than the first version that all the test audiences hated. So that's where we are in Hollywood now. The internet is basically writing all of these scripts, and the filmmakers are just trying to well, we know what they're trying to do. They're trying to wokesterize the world and promote their own political views by wearing hollowed out intellectual properties as a zombie-like skin suit. And
Basically,
you know,
and
this
I
is
I don't disagree with any particular point you have going there. I mean, quite frankly, they've been waddling around in the skin suit of Walt Disney for the past 15 years with absolutely no shame.
And it has been just about 15 years now. Like just
Yep.
about since the start of the 2010s was where things really started to go off the rails. Because as anybody knows who's been alive longer than 5 minutes, Disney used to be a company that took the reputation of its brand very, very, very seriously, to the point where they will sue preschools for having Mickey Mouse painted on the wall outside. I mean, that's how seriously Disney used to take their brand image, and specifically with a mind to always being a brand that is friendly and accessible to children and families. And then they just decided that we should queer all the kids, and it was like an overnight thing. Let's queer the kids.
Lorenzo, stop chewing on my desk.
Damn it, Lorenzo.
Damn it, Lorenzo. Yeah, no, it's a bit of a persnickety position to be in. You've got things like stockholders and stuff, and they're basically been riding on the fact that movies are generally profitable in the long run, and so you can sort of fail. You could fail at the box office a little bit and then get the cult classic crowd, right? People who loved it and went to see it 5 times and go see it again. And you can make a movie pay off in the long run if you hold out with it long enough. The issue is the budgets have become so disastrously overbloated, and the quality has not improved.
If you're painting yourself into a corner where your picture has to make 700, 800, $1 billion just in order to break even, just to paper over all of your fuck ups that you made during the production process, that is not a good place to be in. You're not even hoping that your pictures make money at that point. You are hoping that they don't ruin you.
Yeah, and each one is kind of lining up as if to be either a at least moderate success or a total failure, and they're just stacking up L's, man. They're stacking up L's. They're losing money hand over fist, and I don't know how long an actual company as Disney would be able to maintain that. Especially if by chance, and I'm just guessing, this is hypothetical, allegedly in Minecraft, some of this US aid money was propping up part of Disney. What then?
And can you even imagine how much they are going to spend on this Avengers movie they're going to try and make and put out in a couple of years? and how much of a disaster that is going to be after they go through this whole exercise that you have to go through now with the reshoots and the rewrites and the whole process that we were just talking about. That's not going to save you guys. I don't get you. You could get 10 of Robert Downey Jr. to come be in this piece of shit, and it's not going to help. It is a dead brand. You have squeezed all the lifeblood out of the brand, and there is none left. This is a story, the Avengers story, that ended 6 years ago in the public consciousness. The story is over. Iron Man died.
Basically, there's really no reviving that one. And any attempt to try to bring in Iron Man's daughter, Ironheart, if I remember right, okay, so I'm a bit of a conservative on this point. The classic Ironheart had actually kind of had a kind of cool backstory. The origin story was basically she's a genius. Tony Stark recognized it and had been secretly kind of pointing her in the right directions to do things, but in reality she was way farther along than he knew. And so around the point in time Tony Stark dies, Ironheart shows up with her version of her Mark 1, and Jarvis finds the Mark 1, realizes she didn't incorporate an AI into it, and joins with her to basically create the Ironheart thing. But it's not Jarvis. It's like what Jarvis could make be in her suit, because it wasn't designed to hold an AI. Anyway, the story is actually really cool, but Disney's take on it is kind of lame. It's
I'm even as we sit here having a hard time trying to remember which movie they introduced Ironheart in. Was it the Doctor Strange picture or the second?
I think it was
the second Black Panther picture, wasn't it?
I think it was the Doctor Strange one of them, with
the
multiverse of madness or something.
They are all so exactly the same at this point that you can't even differentiate one from the other in your own memory.
They have gotten kind of generic, and the big, huge, enormous, splashy special effects and everything. We've been seeing this stuff. It hasn't improved. If anything, it's gotten choppier and less believable. You know,
I think the CGI looks worse than it did 10, 12, 15 years ago, if that's possible. I don't know how that's possible, because they're sure spending a hell of a lot more on it. But like the CGI, you've seen, I'm sure, the in the Snow White trailer, what the dwarves look like.
Yeah.
I mean, really, guys? That's the best we could do here?
Well, I mean, everything else they did was a disaster.
The uncanny valley effect is something that I would expect from a picture from like 2012 or even earlier than that. I feel like this is not any step up in photorealism between then and now.
Fiona brings up an interesting point. And they're tapping Robert Downey Jr. to play Dr. Doom. And isn't that going? I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't have tapped Downey Jr. for that. You know who I would have went after? You remember the Sherlock show that had Doctor Strange in it as Sherlock Holmes?
Oh, yeah.
The villain in that, Moriarty, the guy who played him, would make an excellent Von Doom. He is British, which is kind of a downside, but at the same time,
and if you wanted to make the best possible movie, then you would cast it that way. But they are in such a really dreadful position right now, not just Disney Marvel, but Disney more broadly, that you have to bring in Downey and just give him something to do, just because you are left with no option except stunt casting. It's just stunt casting, and it's really kind of sad.
You know what I think?
Marvel used to make their money on making good movies and advancing a narrative and a story that people were invested in and cared about. And what was the result? They had the biggest earning box office property in world history. Probably all of world history, past and future.
What I would have done if I had Robert Downey Jr. under contract and could squeeze a handful of like extra Iron Man scenes out, so you could do some flashback things from before the death of Iron Man and do a proper Von Doom. So you could do like just a few extra reshoots and a little bit of green screen work, put Von Doom in the middle of all of it.
And if you if you got the right person to write the script and direct it and didn't try to Disney wokeify the thing, you probably could make a lot of money with an Iron Man prequel where you just do some mild digital de-aging on Downey, and make it be, you could make it be in the time frame between the first and second, or the second and third in the Iron Man
I'm just
trilogy.
saying,
You could do
it's
any
not
number of things.
undoable.
And
It's
but
just
I think
I
bringing
don't
Downey as a completely different character is going to backfire.
right. I don't think Downey he's not the right person for Von Doom in the first place. I mean, this is the same corporation that has Johnny Depp under contract. You could have brought Johnny Depp in as a Von Doom and just completely knocked it out of the park. Utilized Downey as some flashbacks of Iron Man. Use some of the cut footage from the previous movies to edit in Von Doom being involved peripherally in all of the trash that's been going all the way up to Endgame, and then
Didn't I hear something about never mind, go ahead.
Have Doom step out from behind the shadows after Thanos and everything's been dealt with and the whole interdimensional problem's been handled, and poof, here's Von Doom with the cure to all the diseases in the world and doing the whole Von Doom thing. I think that could work, but it's not going to work.
Something similar to what they did in the second act in Endgame, where they sent the characters back into the earlier movies.
Essentially, yes, but similar, but utilizing unused footage from previous movies rather than just reshooting entire scenes and green screening the edges. You wouldn't have to do that with this type of thing. You would take the original scene and then reshoot bits to put in it to fit, right?
And don't we've got a Fantastic Four picture coming out this year, don't we? Who knows what that's going to be like?
All right, so the Fantastic Four, I believe, is a cursed property.
It is. It is a comic book property that can never transfer well to cinema, in my opinion.
Is it the powers?
That's part of it. Yeah, Mr. Fantastic can never not look ridiculous on a movie screen.
Right.
I don't think there's any way you can do it.
And then Invisible Girl is just invisible, so
Yeah, the only thing you can get out of that is naked jokes, like we got half a dozen times with Jessica Alba in the previous movies.
Yeah, and then you've got the Torch and Clobber guy. Neither one of them are great to look at. The special effects on the Torch could be all right, but
yeah, that's really the only one that you can transfer to the big screen and have it work well, or even better than it looks in the comic. The other three, I don't think you can do. I think you're absolutely right that it is a doomed enterprise trying to make a good Fantastic Four movie. It will never be done.
Right. Yeah. Magneto became Netanyahu. You get
I don't even have a snappy comeback for that one.
I got nothing, man. He gets a participation trophy that's right next to the door on the way out, bro.
Give that man the purple ribbon, goddammit.
Yes, sir. One purple ribbon coming up. So is there any saving Disney? Is there any way to pull Disney out of this tailspin? Can we agree that one super awesome movie popping out might save them?
It would have to be a hell of a super awesome big earning movie. It would have to have the effect of changing the studio's behavior, and that's the obstacle that I don't know that you can get over as long as the current leadership remains in place.
You're right. Izzy, welcome in, girl. Appreciate you coming through. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. So essentially any success that Disney has will simply inure the sickness that is taking it over, right? It'll just stand longer because if it has a success now, it'll just inject more money into a failing enterprise. Because you can't keep making flops. You can't do it.
Even a company as big and as rich as Disney, you can't just put out half a dozen pictures each year that all lose 2, 3, $400 million at least. You don't have enough reserves, not just of money, but of prestige to withstand something like that. You're just making piece of dog shit after piece of dog shit that nobody likes. And there's a limit to how long you can do that, because that drags down all the rest of your properties. It drags down your cruise properties and your vacation properties, because who wants to associate with a brand that only knows how to make pieces of shit? Who wants to pay thousands of dollars for a fancy vacation for a brand that just wants to queer the little kids and make shitty movies? I don't. I probably wouldn't anyway, but that's just me. So yes, to answer the question, Disney doomed? Yes. I think Disney will have to divest itself of the Marvel brand and the Star Wars brand, and then even then, if those two brands come under new ownership, it will take a period of years to salvage them and return them to anything resembling
I don't know.
the sort of prestige that they formerly enjoyed. I mean,
Let me throw a hypothetical at you. So,
okay.
if I don't know how far into the Star Wars universe you've delved pre-Disney, but there was the extended universe, and then there was also Legends, right? And there were a plethora of authors that wrote books across these different canons, right?
To answer the question, I think I've read the main Timothy Zahn trilogy, and that's about it.
Okay, good. That actually works pretty well. But Timothy Zahn was probably one of the better writers that took on Star Wars writing, and anything from him, I'm down for backing. But if
I actually went back and read a couple of those books not long ago, and they held up. I enjoyed them as much as I did when I was a teenager.
Dude, they're phenomenal. That whole Thrawn's duology and all of that was all freaking awesome, dude. Like, it's my favorite Star Wars series.
Well, and people who don't remember 35 years ago, they don't understand that for a lot of years that was the only new Star Wars content there was.
No,
was new novels and comic books.
Right. And there's another one. There's a chick. She's gotten married, and I don't know her new name, but she wrote under the pen name of Karen Travis, and she did a whole spectrum of clone trooper books that are phenomenal. She also wrote large portions of the Halo series when they adapted it to novels. So just anybody out there who's come across that, she did some Star Wars novels too, and they're very good.
And it's amazing to consider that in just barely over a decade since acquiring the brand, Disney has screwed that pooch so hard that when they divest themselves of the brand, they probably will pay less than the $4 billion that they paid buying it from George. And wouldn't it be hilarious if he bought the thing back at a profit, which I think has a chance of happening, if I'm being honest.
I don't like to hope in dark places. I was kind of hoping when the Mandalorian series busted off like it did, I was kind of hoping we were seeing the dawn of a new era. And
I think a lot of people were.
I liked Skeleton Crew. It was pretty good, but then again, I'm a fan of the Goonies anyway, so I don't care what environment you put the Goonies in, I'm probably going to watch it.
Yeah, I never watched that one still.
It's the Goonies of space, and it's not badly done.
But you're right. The Mandalorian first season should have been an excellent jumping off point for a corner of the Star Wars universe that just exists on the Disney Plus platform. And where did it go sideways? It went sideways when they fired Gina Carano. And the entire Star Wars brand has been straight fucking downhill ever since that. You can almost draw a straight line to that day to where everything went sideways, and it's been a complete unmitigated disaster since then.
All over the words, boop, beep, boop.
You're absolutely correct. All over that.
And do you know why she messaged that she was not
because
allowed.
because she was told by her employers that she was required to put her pronouns in her social media profile.
Right, but she wasn't yet permitted to do the full admission that she was hired by Disney because she was still one of the secret guest stars. You know, she wasn't in the first handful of Mandalorian episodes. She was introduced later on. So
Well, and by
during
the time you get to the second season, she's the most popular thing in the show, and for good reason. She kicked ass in that show.
she balls deep, man, and all she needs is a
she,
round
she,
of
she absolutely was the best thing about that. That character is the best character that Disney Star Wars has produced in the 12 years they have owned the brand. And what do? They fired her ass when she posted Beep Bop Boop. That's how much Disney Star Wars cares about the prestige of their brand.
Exactly. They give no shit. Meanwhile, they ran block for Rachel Ziegler through the entire freaking extraneous, all of this randomness that's been going on with the release of Snow White. They've been trying to keep her under the dark tent of no return forever.
Canceling premieres. Moving premieres to abandoned castles so that she can't get anywhere near the press. It's like late period Joe Biden. Just keep him the hell away from live microphones. Whatever you do.
Weird. Lorenzo,
Weird.
stop eating my desk.
She's in love with a prince who totally stalks her. Weird.
Okay, all right. So let's pick that apart right quick. Let's go for it. The story revolves around a princess who falls asleep due to a curse, only to be awakened by true love's first kiss, right?
And I heard they've turned the prince into a petty criminal. That's a fun move.
So the thing here is that is weird. I will give it to you. That is a really creepy sort of setup, but arranged marriages were not unusual for the time period. And this is merely a case of arrangement through time rather than space.
Arranged marriages have been the norm in all human societies for 99% of human history.
You're right. And I mean, whatever you may think of them, that's the history you're dealing with. And so this idea of a true love prince showing up to marry the princess, it's kind of corny. Let's be honest. That's corny. But it's also the story. And you can't change that part of the story without changing the premise of the entire story.
Well, the story of Snow White ultimately, and I really don't think the filmmakers of the new picture understand this, but it's a story about female aging and women being afraid of growing old. That's the thrust of the story. And
I mean,
we can dress it up in happy cartoon images, but ultimately it's a story about something much more probative.
Dude, did you just say the wall is undefeated even with magic? You did good, sir. Take you a lap around the bases right quick. I think that was worthwhile. Yeah. But no, you're not wrong. It's all about, fear of aging. Magic mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest of them all? Well, it ain't you, bitch.
The older woman
brand new
is
J-Lo in
jealous
town
of the younger woman's beauty and wants to take it from her. Because that's even though she's got all kinds of wealth and power, she just wants to look like a young woman instead of an old one, and she is maniacally in pursuit of that completely irrational goal, and wreaks a lot of harm and misery in the process of pursuing it, and that's really the vehicle that drives the entire narrative forward.
I got a couple of things over here we're going to jump into, and it did that thing again that I don't like. All right, so according to the AP, and I don't know how much we want to trust the AP, but apparently Trump voices anger at Putin threatens of tariffs on Russian oil. Ooh, oh no, what are we going to do?
You never get action verbs like that in headlines about Joe Biden from the AP. Like angry and threaten and never.
Yeah, language is fine.
If that headline was about Joe Biden, it would be phrased completely differently.
Greenland Prime Minister says U.S. will not get Greenland. Manifest destiny, bro.
Don't we kind of already have Greenland? I mean,
We have technical control over the waters outside of Greenland due to the absolute necessity of keeping that passage open.
I mean,
Pretty much the world has gone went.
I'm just saying.
US
Last time I checked, there's only one country that has military installations in Greenland, and it is not Denmark. It's us.
Right. That's what I mean. It's like sort of a default American province, which I think all of this was largely done just to kind of shake up the whole concept of acquisition. The idea of merely purchasing, that hasn't been done like since the Louisiana Purchase.
Yeah, and I also think Trump likes to say things just to see how people will react.
Yeah, like this whole Commonwealth thing.
I think he's built much of his career, both in business and in politics, just on the perception that he's a guy who says crazy things, and seeing how people react. Like when he proposed the thing about Gaza. Oh yeah, we're gonna buy Gaza. We're gonna move all the people out. We're gonna turn it into a Trump resort. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be the greatest place in the whole. And all it takes is that little bit of bluster. And within 48 hours, there's been more movement on solving the Gaza problem among the Egyptians and the Jordanians and all the other concerned parties than there has been in the last 40 years. So you tell me Trump doesn't know what he's doing when he says things like that are just wacky, crazy things.
Well, when you think about why the reaction that occurs, when Trump says something like that, you have to take a step back and look at the situation as it stands. This man is in control of the most powerful army currently occupying the earth, who has bases within striking distance of virtually every spot on the globe within like 20 minutes. So if this man says he's going to show up and turn it into a shopping strip, you might want to look at the logistics of exactly how long it might take him to do it. Because if he gives the order, it's going to go something like that, at least for a little while. And so you have to consider it seriously, even if he's totally just,
Yes. And on a similar note, I like that he is willing to publicly throw out solutions for problems that most people think are kind of out of left field. Like with the Russia-Ukraine war, when he said, well, how about if we buy and operate your nuclear plants? You want security guarantees? Is there any better security guarantee than American ownership and operation of Ukraine's nuclear plants? You think Russia is ever going to attack Ukraine again if we are running all of their nuclear plants? Of course they're not. And does it wind up happening? Probably not. Overwhelming chance it doesn't happen. But there's nothing wrong with throwing it out there and seeing how people react to it. Absolutely nothing at all. Because you can tell a lot about people's intentions by how they react to things.
You're not wrong. And also forcing people to take a look at their own problems from a new perspective can be a very effective way of accomplishing movement in an area that's been stagnant.
And sometimes all you have to do to promote a thought process like that is just to say something out of the box that people think sounds crazy. It's just amazing how effective it can be in actually getting a ball to roll forward when it's just been sitting there for however many years.
Sneezes. Somebody bless me I'll say somebody bless me in that chat.
So I'm going through the Doge scoreboard for this week. And I noticed a strange thing, because in the column where it says the description of what the thing, there's a column for the agency and the date and what the thing was and the amount and when it got cut. And all of a sudden this week, where there used to be descriptions of the expenditures being cut, it now says unavailable for legal reason. And you know why that is? Because these activist Democrat Party apparatchik judges who keep jumping in and basically canceling every single exercise of presidential power that Trump tries to engage in. Now, when they are issuing injunctions against Doge canceling things, part of the injunction is you are not even allowed to put on your website the information about the thing that was canceled, even though you are paying for it. You cannot have the information about the thing you paid for that has been canceled. And tell me that's not judicial activism. Is that judicial
activism?
We would almost need a new term that goes farther than judicial activism. Just like over in Britain, they need a new adjective that is stronger than Orwellian. I think we need to start calling Britain post-Orwellian, frankly, because I don't think Orwell could have come up with some of this stuff, frankly.
You're actually the second. Go ahead.
Even in his most wildly depressing fantasies, I don't think he could have come up with some of this stuff.
But you're actually the second person to come at me saying we need a new adjective to describe something after Orwellian, more Orwellian than Orwellian, and
Yes.
post-Orwellian. I think we're past that, man. Post-Orwellian. That was 2020, right? 2020 was Orwellian. That was straight out of the freaking book. Orwellian, literal Orwellian nightmare. We're post-Orwellian, but what is that though? Pre-cyberpunk.
It's almost like the famous definition of pornography. I can't define it, but I sure as hell know it when I see it.
I know it when I see it. That's right. And you gotta love it. Is it art? Is it pornography? I don't know. Let me take a look at it.
And just you read about the things that people are being arrested for now in Britain, and you can't believe it's real. Like parents posting on Facebook a complaint about their kid's teacher at school. Cops knocking on the door. You're going to need to come with us, ma'am. You're under arrest for insensitive social media posts.
You had an unsupervised thought. Step away from the cell phone.
I think back to when my British friends always used to tell me, they always used to be kind of haughty about not having a written constitution. They used to say, oh, we don't need a written constitution. We have the weight of hundreds of years of tradition and precedent. Our institutions are fine. They don't need to be backed up by a written Bill of Rights or anything like that. Our right to free speech in Britain is so rock solid that it could never be threatened. And come back and tell me that now, guys.
Right. But I mean, how far down the rabbit hole do you have to go before you encounter solid ground? I mean, these are all supposedly public funds that the public's not allowed to know about without somehow figuring out how to research it through a FOIA request. And how is it that something that's being done publicly but with public funds isn't available through a basic FOIA request? Specifically, what did Doge cancel this week?
Yeah, and Doge is trying to do this in the most open and transparent way that it can possibly. It probably is the most open and transparent exercise of government power in U.S. history with the information that they're trying to put out there. And what do you get? You get a judge coming along with an injunction saying, no, you're putting too much information out there and it's too embarrassing to the government, so you can't do that anymore.
I kind of want Trump to yell into the mic one day that I am the law. Give it a good growl. I am the law.
He should, because he's right. And I don't know if anybody in the audience right now has gone and read any of these decisions, like the actual letter of the written opinions that the judges publish along with the injunction, but it's really shocking how little legal rationale and reasoning is contained in those opinions. And I know I've brought this up before, but it's just, I wish more people would go and read it, because it will shock the conscience of any normal, decent person to see a legal injunction against an exercise of presidential power being justified with just a list of a judge's personal preferences. It's just a judge. Well, I don't like this. I think this is bad. Therefore, you can't do it.
Yeah.
And that's all there is. There is no legal rationale at all. And is anybody cool with that? I'm not. If I was a Democrat, I wouldn't be cool with that.
Another reason Trump says some of the things he does is to trigger those types of legal battles in order to go ahead and have it done with early rather than late, because that battle is
Yes.
going to have to be had. And now that it's been triggered, that can go to the Supreme Court, post
Yeah,
haste.
and you're right. Let's cause the upheaval and let it run its course and be done with it, because this eventually will all be done with, because the Congress is going to act. There are already a couple of bills in the pipeline that are going to preclude this practice of judge shopping, which is what we're seeing with all of these executive orders being enjoined against. You just go from one district judge to another district judge to another district judge until you get a guy that says, well, yeah, I hate Trump, I'll sign that one. And that's really all it comes down to.
And like you said, when you go and look at the rationale behind it, it's basically a bunch of nanny boo-boo shit. He stole my favorite toy and I'm not going to play anymore. I want to take it and go home.
Yep.
And why is that your favorite toy, sir? Why are you so concerned about apparently fraudulent funds being spun by the federal government?
And why do we let judges make political contributions?
My God, do not. That's not a rabbit hole we're playing with tonight. We're fixing to have to go into some fisticuffs.
Gotcha.
And we got 5 minutes. So do we have anything in particular we want to poke at?
You mean with George?
Sure. We can jump on that. I'm not going to hit play until we get to the point in time in the thing, but
the thing I would like to open with on George is, in our current day, in the third decade of the 21st century, it's become much less of a big deal to see athletes performing at an elite level well into their 40s. Because, I mean, haven't we seen Tom Brady win a Super Bowl at age 44 or something like that? But anyway, people who are too young or weren't alive and don't remember it really can't have proper appreciation of what a momentous achievement it was when 45-year-old George Foreman took the title off Michael Moorer in 1994. That was a thing that shouldn't have been possible. Foreman, I mean, for just quick run through, he wins the gold medal, Mexico City, 68. He and tell me if this is something you would ever see today. He's undefeated in his first 37 fights before he ever gets a title shot. 30s. That's how afraid the rest of the heavyweight division was of this guy, and there was good reason for that. Because let's talk about the day he first comes up against Joe Frazier. Joe Frazier on that day in, I believe, January of 1973, is the most fearsome heavyweight in world history at that point. He's the undefeated heavyweight champion of the world. He has just defeated Muhammad Ali and knocked him down in the fight of the century at Madison Square Garden in 71. And he tunes up against a couple of tomato cans after, and then he's going to fight Foreman. Foreman is he's the top up-and-coming heavyweight at that point. It feels weird calling a guy an up-and-comer when he's had 37 fights, but that's the way he was viewed. And Joe Frazier had a reputation at this point that was pretty much the same reputation that Foreman would have a couple years later before the Rumble in the Jungle fight. He was a absolute marauding, undefeatable heavyweight champion who nobody could possibly touch. And it was thought by most people, 100% of the experts, that Frazier was just going to steamroll this poor Foreman guy. And Foreman inflicts one of the most decisive ass kickings in the history of heavyweight championship fights. And everybody's seen the clip, the Howard Cosell clip. Down goes Frazier! Down goes Frazier! Down goes... And that's how shocking it was. None of this was supposed to happen. The fight doesn't get out of the second round. The third knockdown happens when Frazier is actually trying to run away. That's how badly this fight went for the guy who was supposed to be invincible.
But you got to remember, bro, that was Foreman when he was an absolute unit. I mean, he walked around and pummeled people to death in and out of the ring. Like, that was just what he did.
Yeah, and it was, and I think at that stage nobody had studied him enough. They didn't know how solid his defense was with the, you know. Remember when Ali said George is like the mummy? He's all got his hands out here.
Yeah.
And he was trying to embarrass him because he knew his defense was so strong. But that's how Foreman did his defense. He had his hands way out wide, and he would block you with his hands, and then he would use his hands to put you where he wanted you to be, so he could hit
And then
you as hard as
pummel
he
you.
wanted to. And
Yes.
that's what he did in the Frazier fight that Frazier didn't have any answer for. Frazier thought he could do his normal thing, you know, get in there with the head bobs, get inside, take some damage while you're in the process of getting inside, but eventually you get inside and you can inflict some punishment. But that never happened because George just embarrassed that man. And Frazier, frankly, he was never the same again after that. He certainly was not the most fearsome heavyweight in the world. And then, you know, Foreman marauds through. He takes the crown that day off of Frazier. He marauds through the division for a couple of years. Then we get to the Rumble in the Jungle in '74. We've done that fight before. Everybody knows about the rope-a-dope and all that stuff. And
At this point, we're dealing with what's this? 47? How old is he? 40?
45.
45.
Fight, yeah.
And he has taken. Hold on. Let me cover a little bit.
Go ahead.
He has come back and changed his entire boxing style. This is no longer the plodding around mummy that you saw for 20 years. Now he's gone with a cross guard style with a closed flex, which allows you to take punishment in your hands. You trade hand movement for head movement, and core body strength is preserved throughout the fight. This allows someone who might get winded quickly to fight longer into the round harder. And I think it was a genius maneuver. I don't think this fight would have been won by old George Foreman.
Absolutely not. And what an auspicious achievement it is, not only to win two heavyweight crowns separated by 21 years, but to do it with two completely night and day different defensive approaches, which is what George did.
And I've got it at I think 3/4 speed just to kind of slow everything down. I know they're heavyweights.
Yeah, that's good. I like it.
It's I like to look at exactly the placement because George Foreman has already moved his feet more in this match than he did in half the matches in his career.
Oh yeah,
he's not exactly dancing, but it's a lot more movement than he would used to do.
Because when you in the old days when you're out wide with the mummy hands, you don't need to move your legs as much. That's why it's such a completely different philosophy. But he gets with Archie Moore. Archie Moore becomes his trainer when he launches his comeback at age 38. And again, for people who don't remember and weren't around at the time, George's comeback when he first announced it at age 38, it was treated a lot by the serious sports press, a lot like the serious political press treated Donald Trump's first entry into politics.
This guy was just unprepared for George Foreman using his hands.
Yeah, this was just going to be a joke. He was just trying to get some headlines, and it would be good for a little bit of humor for a while, and then he would drop off the face of the earth. Absolutely nobody was expecting that he had any chance to work himself back into being a top contender, much less taking the title off somebody. And it takes him a long time. It takes him 7 years. When he first launches that comeback, he's not fighting high-profile fights immediately. He's fighting in high school gyms against, number 100 contenders. He's got to show that he's in any sort of condition to even stand up and be in a ring and compete. But he demonstrates that he is. And yeah, he starts out at 38. It takes him all the way until 45 to get to this night against Michael Moorer, the only southpaw heavyweight champion of the 20th century, which is another complicating factor in this fight that cannot be overstated how important that is.
Bro, when he swings that left hook, it is absolutely ungodly, man. It just comes out of left field. It's a little bit farther off center than most southpaws. They tend to go for a more straight shot. He does a weird.
Yeah, that's actually something I forgot to mention when I was talking about the Frazier fight, because you remember what Frazier used to do. He would get your timing off with the head bob, and then he would sneak inside, and meanwhile you're trying to hit him from the sides, and he keeps ducking his head, and you keep missing him, and you're using up all your energy, and you're not even connecting on those punches. And what George does in their first fight in '73, he just says, well, I'm going to hit the motherfucker straight ahead, and then it doesn't matter what level his head's at. I'm going to hit him whether he's up or down. And he gets 3 knockouts in a round and a half, or 3 knockdowns in a round and a half, and ultimately a knockout. And
Right.
yeah, it's one of those things that make you wonder, why the hell didn't Ali try that? But Ali didn't try that, and he lost the fight of the century. But you know,
Yep.
I don't think we should treat that, as a lot of people do, as an Ali loss as much as a Frazier win, because
I mean, Foreman's just over here just pummeling this cat. I mean, he's trying to block with his hands too, but when Foreman hits you, it's like trying to catch a light pole. I mean, yeah, you could bleed a little bit of energy off of it, but you just got hit by your glove just as hard as he hit your gloves.
and I forgot about this, but he's gone away from the cross guard here. I remember it in the early. Go ahead.
He fumbles in and out of the cross guard when he's in tight. When he gets in close, he kind of flubs it a bit. But the second he remembers, he goes immediately back to it.
But this fight was such a wonderful feat of strategic planning on the part of Foreman and Archie Moore, who's in his corner, you know, whose style he is using, or a version of his style. You couldn't really replicate Archie Moore's style. There's
that hook I was talking about.
Yeah, there's a reason why they called him the mongoose, because he combined the crossed guard with the crouch. I know he was only a light heavyweight, but there was no other heavyweight has ever fought the way Archie Moore did, and maybe that's how his career lasted well into his 50s. Who knows?
I mean, you got to use what you got. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I had forgotten that he had gone away from the cross guard because I do remember that in the first couple rounds he comes out with it, and he actually takes a lot of damage. I think he loses most of the early rounds because he's got a game plan. He and Archie Moore have a game plan, and they are sticking to it. And it's going to involve losing some rounds and taking some damage. But if you stick to the plan, if you get into the 9th or 10th round, this guy's gonna make a mistake and leave an opening, and you just need to capitalize on it. And there's gonna be a 1-punch knockout there for you, and you just have to convert it, which of course he ultimately does.
Right, and there's another thing to watch here. Throughout all of this, Moore hasn't really made a whole lot of errors to speak of. I think he was hedging a little too close to that jab, right? He took way too many jabs. That's what eventually wore him out, having to run away from that jab after it got sore, right?
Yeah, we're in round 10. We're coming up on the punch here, I think.
Yeah, it's fixing to happen, and he's already done that slip twice. And Foreman's just trying to line up the third one to get him.
Yep, and it's just a simple straight right hand, and he's just waiting for it to be there.
He knows exactly where he's hunting that spot down. He's like, come over here, let me push the button. Your hands are weak. Your arms are tired. You've been beaten, pummeled by a big man for a while. It's about time to take a nap.
You were expecting to put me away a couple rounds ago. You're kind of not quite as confident as you were early on. Starting to have some doubts about yourself. But what a triumph this is of sticking to a strategic game plan. And,
yes, sir.
You know, just building an entire game plan up to a particular opportunity for a particular punch in a particular round and having it materialize. It's just brilliant. And I wish more people remembered and were familiar with this fight, because there's so much here to appreciate. And Moore doesn't acquit himself badly at all. He was He
Oh,
was a
he
really
does.
good champion.
He made a really good fight of it. Most men put in the position of fighting this new and improved George Foreman probably wouldn't have made it to round 10.
Nope, absolutely not.
And there it is.
There it was.
And I want to back that up. And
Yep.
Pitt, he has been putting that exact same punch on him through this entire round. It's almost as if he went into the corner and homie went, hey, man, every time you push his face, he drops his right hand. Every time you reach out and touch him in the eyes, he drops that guard just a hair. Just pummel that blind spot that he's got. And he come out and he missed a whole bunch of them, but he also glanced a bunch of them, which wore down that particular defense.
You know, something else I forgot. Something else I forgot about this fight is how svelte George looks. How I'm not going to say skinny, but how not fat he looks compared to some of the other fights from this period. Like he was really serious about doing his road work for this one. He knew that if he didn't take the strap in this match, he was never getting another chance to take the strap. And I think he prepared for this fight like an absolute madman. Like few people have ever prepared for a fight before.
And his cross guard
obviously is a big part of that.
Using that cross guard kind of goes to seed in round like 9, round 8 maybe. He did a real good job of it. I know we didn't watch the earlier rounds, but in the earlier rounds, he actually stays covered up and tucked real tight. And
well, you know what he's doing is a different version of what Ali did to him in the Rumble in the Jungle with the rope-a-dope. What can I do to make this guy punch himself out without taking intolerable amounts of damage? Is the strategy. And Ali arrives at his strategy when he notices that the ropes are looser than they normally are. And George does it with the cross guard, accomplishes the same purpose. And you're
2 fresh fighters. This is round 1, right at the very beginning. George is doing his sort of a weird blend of the mummy hands with the cross guard, but he's not doing any of the crowds.
It really is kind of a hybrid.
It's obvious he's trying real hard to make that cross guard work for him, and it is working for him with that left hand out front. Every single glove that gets past that hand is contacted by that hand. And George is a big, big man. So when the 2 gloves contact, impetus is taken straight off of the snap of the punch.
And back when he was in his first title reign, he would have been taking almost the opposite approach, starting with his hands out wide and then swatting punches away as they come in instead of starting in the cross guard. And you're almost swatting them away backhanded instead of front-handed.
Well, you're creating a bubble using your glove as the contact point for it to slide outside of your guard. And that leaves you on the inside if that happens successfully. And that gives you hook, jabs, uppercuts. You've got rabbit punches, all kinds of stuff that can happen in that scrum.
I feel like I should make a Chuck Wepner joke since you mentioned that.
I think you just did.
We did that fight too, didn't we?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I want to go through some Prince Aziz fights.
One of the many fights that inspired Rocky.
They just stand there and beat each other to death, flat-footed.
We also have done the Ron Lyle fight, Foreman versus Lyle, Caesar's Palace 76. My favorite heavyweight fight of all time. And that's from that fight, as you remember, is where we get the image which Stallone used in Rocky 2 of a guy holding himself up with the ring rope and just swinging wild haymakers with the other hand. That wasn't the thing that Stallone invented. That's a thing he got from George Foreman in real life.
Right. How you gonna knock a man that's standing up with a third leg, dude? Like, he's got a hand on the world over there. You ain't gonna knock him out.
And I don't even care that fight ended in the 6th round. It's still my favorite fight of all time. That is as close as real world heavyweight boxing gets to a video game.
You might be right. Lorenzo, stop eating my desk. You bad dog. Back off.
Pissing
Stop
me
eating
off,
my shoe.
Lorenzo.
I'm thinking something must have been splashed on it at some point. I'll wipe that thing down when we get done. Maybe he'll stop trying to chew the freaking leg off the desk. But it's a very different fight in the first half as opposed to that last 3 rounds.
Yep.
Because Moore is coming in. He's trying to work on the inside, but George really just has so much reach on him that even when he gets inside, he's in the freaking bunker buster zone. It's the kill box, man. If you get close enough to actually hit George Foreman is well past close enough to hit you really hard.
Right. And just as importantly, I think when you get into about round 5 and 6, George feels like he has solved the southpaw problem and is more comfortable with the approach he's going to take, and he knows his game plan is solid, and he just needs to see it through and execute it, which he of course does.
Right. And it's, I still say that last little break that he had in the corner, that his coach looked him straight in the face. His trainer was like, look, man, he's dropping that shoulder. You need to eat up that forehead. Eat up that forehead. Reach out and pet him. Make sure he, he's a good pet. Reach over and pet him. And that's all he's doing right there. He's just rubbing his forehead.
You want to know why I'm proud of us right now?
How's that?
Because we're into the last 14 minutes of the show and nobody has mentioned a George Foreman grill.
I'm not that cheap. Yes, I do own one and I use it religiously. It's great for bacon.
You know, there was a joke that I actually almost put in the open of the roundup when I said we're gonna pour one out for George.
Just
that means we pick up our grills and pour out the fat.
Too soon. It's too soon.
See, that's what I erred on the side of good taste. You're welcome.
I don't know. I don't know which side of that I approve, but I approve.
There's a reason why I didn't use the joke.
Right. Oh, wow. Maybe next week. Yeah, no, if you watch what he does, he throws the exact same combination that ends this fight probably 30 times in the last 3 rounds. None of them quite land proper, but it's a very near miss in all of them. I mean, he's already trying to set up on it now by slapping that jab up there real quick.
And I want to talk a little bit, while we still have a few minutes, about national heroes, because each time someone of this stature dies, and it's a thing I often think about also when one of, say, for example, one of the Apollo astronauts leaves us, that we have so few people like that anymore who are widely loved and respected by the entire population, irrespective of any consideration of anything. We used to have people that everybody liked, and there was never any misunderstanding about why they were liked. We liked them because they did great things and they were good people. George Foreman did great things and he was a great man, and that's why we liked him. Why can't we still have people like that? Why does everything have to be infected and viewed through the lens of race or politics or whatever goddamn other thing? Why can't we just celebrate good people doing great things and leave it at that? We used to be able to do that. We need to regain that ability, in my estimation.
I agree. There's a lot of people who have taken the concept of wearing their heart on their sleeve straight, pardon the pun, to heart. They exist in a constant state of agitation and absurdism. They are offended by facts and logic and get really upset when people tell them really rational things. And I don't understand the desire to stand ignorantly woke in the face of the modern change. If you want to be on the right side of history, which is the quote they always say, you're not making a good go of it by trying to support government waste and fraud. That's the weirdest flex ever. Like, where do you get off?
Yes. And when are we going to ask the question? Because I think it is the most pertinent question that people all across the Anglosphere need to be asking right now. How much government is enough? And why don't we ever ask that? Because isn't that a really goddamn important conversation to have?
I agree.
Are we supposed to just resign ourselves to a reality where government only inexorably grows bigger and bigger and bigger and more odious and more powerful? Or are we allowed to say, maybe that's enough bureaucracy, maybe we should start dialing it back? And thank God that we have actually begun to start engaging in that process here in America. In Europe, they might be too far gone. I don't really know if there's any hope for Europe at this point. When even the conservative parties over there are to the left of our Democrats, I don't know how you solve that.
Yeah, it's gone a little far to seed out there. You know, they're a little off in the weeds, I believe. But inevitably, reality will swing in the other direction. The pendulum must fall back to center inevitably. And you can only drag the Overton window so far before it becomes absurdist. And we've reached that level of absurdity that people are just not willing to accept it anymore. It was a nice story, and everyone liked hearing it with some really interesting characters. But quite frankly, we need to go back to work and do the job again and not reside in fantasy.
And the thing that a lot of our self-appointed cultural overlords fail to consider or appreciate is that when you forcibly drag the Overton window way the hell over to one side, when you stop dragging it, it doesn't just sit there and kind of slowly ease itself back little by little. It wildly overcorrects itself. It goes all the way back to here. So, and they just don't understand that they say they are afraid of the world turning into an episode of The Handmaid's Tale. Well, with each lurch that you impose to the left, you make that actually more of a possible eventuality. I mean, do you even understand that? The wilder you go, the wilder the overreaction becomes that you are going to motivate.
But maybe that's the plan. Look at the narrative they've been running with the whole nationalist white supremacy thing being the big bad boogeyman, while it's middle-aged white people out there burning up places for Black Lives Matters. It's so weird, right? It sounds an awful lot like the world Charlie Manson described. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I absolutely refuse to live in a world where Charlie Manson was right. And if you want to live in that world, go ahead. Y'all go burn down your Starbucks and do what you're going to do, because I'm not going to participate. I'm not going to be involved in legal backlash. Every single time you have one of these frou-for-alls kick off and you invite Prometheus, it's not a protest once fire has been established.
Oh, we've gone to a strange place politically when we have environmentalists torching electric cars.
Right? Like 5 years ago, Elon Musk was the soy boy capital of the world, bro. Like he was.
Oh my God, I know. Guy. Are you kidding me? When he was still a low information Democrat voter, he was the most popular guy in the world.
Exactly.
They all loved him. There was a waiting line, several years long to get one of his cars, because that was the greatest woke status symbol you could ever possibly have, was a Tesla. And now Teslas are getting swastikas carved on them by the same people who used to aspire to own one. That's just the way things go now, I guess.
So this overcorrection you're talking about, I must confess, several years ago, I saw this whole thing panning out, not in individual strokes, but in a broad category. And I had a conversation with some of my friends, and I was like, if somebody could start a conservatively based political channel that is slightly left of or slightly right of the Overton window and not that far afield, it should survive this final gasp of this left wing swing before the reality sets itself back in. It will assert itself. And when it does, if a handful of channels can survive the purge that falls, then they'll be made in the shade, bro. It should work. There should be a way. If we can just make it through what's about to happen, because the only way they can control the narrative at this point is through direct force of action.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised to see the Daily Wire falling apart. Did you see that news?
Why does that surprise you?
Well, because I thought they were being run by people who weren't idiots and knew how to make money. I'm surprised to see. I mean, granted, it did strike me as a little bit weird when they started making children's content. I didn't really think that was a lane they needed to be in, and that's the division of the company that they have just axed. And of course, Jeremy Boring has left as the CEO, which also surprised me. So I don't know what's going to happen over there now. But they were I kind of viewed them as the most stable ones in that space. You know what I mean? In the space of conservative content creation platforms or whatever you want to call it, media outlets, non-traditional media outlets. I don't know what the right term is.
But is it not very coincidental that this thing goes down at around the same time all of the funding gets pulled from all the wild programs? Is there any chance these things are related?
That hadn't occurred to me, but I guess it's not outside the realm of possibility, is it?
It's kind of interesting that just a bare few months ago, most of the big personalities all jumped ship. They all dipped for reasons unspecified.
Yeah, there's a lot of downsizing going on now that the USA and HHS and all the other alphabet soup gravy trains are being taken offline. It's funny how that works.
I heard a proposal today that tickled my pickle so much I had to sit and giggle about it. They're talking about folding the DEA and the ATF into the same agency.
And I don't like that idea. You know why? Because corrupt agency plus corrupt agency doesn't equal non-corrupt agency. How about let's just abolish the both of the fucking things?
Pretty much. Neither one of them do anything useful. The states can handle whether or not they want machine guns. There's, I mean,
yeah, they are both. They are the kind of agencies that just exist to accrue power unto themselves.
Exactly.
And that's the only damn thing they wind up doing. And that's the only damn thing that winds up happening when you allow bureaucracies to multiply and grow and not have any check on their power or their expansion, which is basically what we've been doing for the last 100 years. And we're only just now starting to stop. And obviously the numbers are really, really shocking to the conscience of anybody who cares about fiscal discipline. But this has been basically an entire century of profligate drunken sailor spending that we are just now starting to step back and say, wow, we've been spending like a bunch of fucking drunken sailors. How did that happen?
You're exactly right. You are so on the nose, man. It has been nuts. I think we did a pretty good show. I got a little thing you wanted me to show. Do you want to do it as the overlay or as the background?
Surprise me. I'll just start talking.
All right. Well, first of all, before we do the surprising part, I want you to see this right here. Bam. Is that not an absolutely stunning photo? That is absolutely beautiful, brother. Like I said, you need to take you a lap around the bases. I think you've earned it.
Since I am a man who always lives up to his word, and I told them I would give them a shout out to Mr. and Mrs. Airman First Class Dylan Nelson of Tucson, Arizona. Congratulations on your wedding that I paid for. And I should have told people to send super chats at the top of the show to help me pay off the wedding, shouldn't I have? But I guess I didn't, and that's okay. You guys looked absolutely great. Fantastic day. Very proud of the both of you. I don't have to say I hope Dylan is a good son-in-law because they actually got married a year ago and just had their wedding last weekend. So I already know he's a great son-in-law. And the two of you now have 358 days remaining to deliver me a grandson named Horatio Nelson. And you are still on the clock. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks ever so much for joining us here on the Blast Radius tonight. We had fun. Hope you did too. Have a very edifying rest of your Sunday weekend and a glorious, satisfying, productive week. We will convene back here next Sunday evening. Same time and channels as always. Until then, see you next time. Do not comply. Get off my lawn.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?